Hello, I'm Dennis, and I'm a doctor, a real doctor. Are you a disc golfer who finds himself incredibly confident on the putting green? Maybe you don't even have the confidence you've been looking for, but it seems like when you have a staggered putt, putt after putt seems to find its way into the basket, even if you aren't throwing the disc in the direction of the basket. While this could be describing you, you may also be suffering from a common disc golf ailment called straddlephobia. It feels like whether you're 5 feet, 10 feet, or 60 feet away from the basket, if you have to straddle putt, you have about the same chance of success. 0. Well, have no fear, especially if your name's Abraham, because we're all wondering, how are you doing today, Abraham? This real doctor is here to help you with exactly that. And I'm a doctor, a real doctor.
So catch me if I fall.
What's up, YouTube fam? Robbie C here. Today we are going to dive into putting a little bit more and talk specifically about straddle putts. I think there are a lot of people out there that would say that they are unconfident when it comes to straddles. I see this happen all the time, whether I'm playing with MA3, MA4 cards, or even if I'm playing pig in my local shop. If I can take someone who feels pretty confident at around those 20-foot putts and simply take them to a straddle putt, which for those of you who are like very new and don't want to understand what I mean there, we have a stagger putt, which is what a lot of traditional putting videos are going to teach, which is where the feet are offset. You're going to rock onto the back foot and push forward with your putting motion. A straddle putt would be where you have your feet more centered up, lined up together, and you're going to be putting between the two. I've seen people who look absolutely confident in their putting stroke throughout the entire round step up to a 12 or 15-foot putt, which should be so brainless for them because they've been making farther putts than that the entire time. But this putt is a straddle putt and they miss it. They've walked in before they even attempted the putt, already nervous about what they're gonna do. I wanna talk a couple minutes today to talk about the pros of straddle putting, how you can work it into your game, and then also what the straddle putt does extremely well so that you may consider using it more often than you do already. Now, as we just mentioned, the stagger putt is what a lot of people are gonna teach in traditional disc golf putting form. And the reason for that is because a lot of the thinking and how the stroke is supposed to go is worked out there in itself. You want to add power and use your lower half inside of your putt. It's very easy. You're going to load weight onto this back foot and press forward when you're ready to deliver the putt. Everything seems to flow together when you're using this staggered putt. Simply line up, bring my feet back, and boom. Another beautiful part about the stagger putt is that whether I want to spin putt or push putt, that was a lot more of a push putt, and I can spin putt, and it does the exact same thing. Having this staggered stance makes that transfer of power very easy. However, one thing that I want to point out about this is that there are not a lot of motions in life where we are simply rocking back and forth like this. You can think of a ball throw where we push forward to back, but that motion is all almost chest height or higher. Having the push where we are coming down into the shot and then extending from almost a waist height up to the chest is something very unique to disc golf. And so a lot of people, when they get into the throwing motion of trying to drive or throw a frisbee, that feels like, hey, maybe I've thrown a frisbee in the past, I can connect with that. But that putting motion can seem so foreign, especially when we try to model our putt after this staggered stance. That's why I often try to tell people the mental trick of, if I were to just ask you to toss me the frisbee, how would you do that? Not think about it, and let your putting form or your putting motion be built off of that. But a straddle stance where my feet are lined up appropriately, it's actually going to take me to a shot that a lot of people have probably thrown at least once in their life if you've ever played the game of basketball before. I know when I've struggled with free throws, we so often will say, hey, let's move to anyone guess what the name of this throw is? That's right, we're going to call it a granny shot, where you bring the basketball between your legs and toss it up in the air. This causes the ball to be rotating backwards, to go in a straight line, because you really don't have to aim it very much. You can just pull it between your legs and then throw it straight at the basket, as opposed to the shifting mechanics between, okay, these fingers are coming, the ball spinning off of this hand. Yeah, guys, it's complicated. I ain't trying to teach a basketball channel. When we switch to a straddle putt, I think that the straddle putt can be very similar to a, quote, granny throw inside of basketball. We have to talk about the mechanics inside of the straddle throw so that you can utilize them, and I want to start by saying where I think a couple people mess it up. A stagger putt people would traditionally consider to have more power and to have a little more freedom in terms of how you're going to throw, whether you want to do that spin putt that we talked about earlier, or if you want to do the push putt from a distance. I gotta pick those up. I should have like a stack of putters for this. A straddle putt is actually going to isolate multiple pieces of the disc golf throw so that we can focus on them individually, and really to cause the straddle putt to have more power, we have to figure out the timing between the two. Now, timing is an issue on the stagger putt as well, but like I said, it's a little more obvious when the timing windows are, because as I'm back here, I'm obviously not throwing, and then when I'm front forward, I'm supposed to be throwing. The stagger putt actually allows you to isolate the leg movement, because rather than going back to forward, things like that, it's more of a down up. And where I think a lot of people can struggle with this is they go straight up. It's almost more of a, we're going to rock forward. Some of the best straddle putters are going up on the balls of their feet when they're pushing up, which causes, as you can see, my weight to come up and over, up and over. Now, another thing, not only does it isolate the legs being used together to generate that power so that I can pop into the shot, but it also allows me to isolate my arm. Many people are missing left and right on the basket, and that is either too much or too little wrist usually being involved in the throw. If I'm trying to bring the disc up and I'm snapping my wrist really hard, because let's say I want to have an Isaac Robinson finish where my hand is like out like this, that can cause me to over wrist the disc and cause it to be all the way out there. As a quick side note, if you're ever trying to replicate a pro's form, specifically putting form, understand that for most of them, the motion has happened all the way back here. The last 25% of their putt, where you're going to see the finished poses, is actually just their body subconsciously letting their hand and their arm get back to a comfortable position. For instance, Isaac Robinson's throw does not involve him slinging that wrist out all the way. Most of his throw actually happens to about right here, and then the finishing, it's almost the cool down or the cool off that's causing his hand to finish out like that. I've seen too many players try to replicate a pro's form and try to hit that exact finish pose, and because they focus so hard on getting to that finish pose, they are actively moving there rather than letting the subconscious take over and doing the active part on the first 75% of the throw, if not 50%. The straddle putt actually allows you to isolate the arm, and this is where we get the replication of the granny throw. I can bring the disc down between my legs and bring it up on this straight line. Now, I'm still going to have, especially if I'm doing a push putt, the proper mechanics of supination, which is turning my palm from down to up and extending my fingers. I'm going to show you this without the putter in my hand, so that as I bring the disc down, as I pull up, you see how this supination happens. My fingers are curled and my palm is down. I bring here and I open up and extend at the basket. I don't have to give it a ton of power because I'm not super close to the basket. At this distance, I actually really don't feel like I have to use my legs too much during this part of the motion, because it's not that far away. I could quite simply, let's say even without using my legs at all, I could just throw a turbo putter right at the basket, because I'm very close to the basket when trying to make that throw. So a lot of times you can get all the power you need just by getting the hand supinated and involved. Now, obviously that's talking about the push putt. When we go to the spin putt, the same mechanics can apply. No one's really spin putting from down here, so I can still have the same motion of isolate the arm and get everything here pointed at the basket, trying to, whoop, see, too much wrist, whoop. Not enough wrist. Still allows me to keep the disc isolated and spin it at the basket. Now, I am not a spin putter, so I am completely content with both of those coming and hitting the band right there. As someone who doesn't really utilize the spin putt at all, being right on target, right at the basket is exactly what I want to look for. But that takes us to the next part, and where people commonly mess up this throw, and they're going to put too much power into these shots, because there is a sneaky amount of power in the straddle putt when you get the legs and the arm working together. I don't have to really use my legs at all, and I can get the height a lot more correct when I am throwing my spin putt from there, because I didn't have to utilize my legs from that close. The more you putt, the more you're going to realize what your power distances are, and that's another reason that I highly suggest working and practice putting as much as possible, so that you can learn inside of 20 feet. You don't really need that much legs, but maybe when you're 40 feet out or 45 feet out, you need to put a little more pop from your lower half involved in your putt. So how do you connect these dots? There are 3 examples of both right and wrong timing when it comes to this. It is too much isolation, it's one piece being ahead of the other, and then third, when we actually get it all correct. So we talked about the beauty and the simplification of being able to isolate the arm. If I'm over wristing, I can just simply swing it down and swing it up right at the target. Nothing's in my way. I have to worry about really overextending my arm, anything like that. I can still keep my arm bent, whoop, very straight, throwing the shot exactly how I want to. If you find yourself struggling mid-round, I've heard and seen plenty of folks switch to a straddle putt for most of the rest of the round, especially when they get these mechanics dialed. But over isolation is where the pieces aren't working together. Over isolation can look like me coming down, standing up, and then extending my arm. You notice I'm doing all of the things, but none of them are helping each other. See, there's no power or fluidity between this, and the rigidity or the isolation of the two can actually work against me in this, because my legs are indeed transferring power, but it all gets lost in my tummy before the arm actually gets to engage. The timing being off of these is also, I can have myself trying to time them correctly and at the same time, but even here, when they're happening at the same time, they're almost working against each other, where my body is pressing up and my arm's pressing forward, which is gonna cause me to almost like fly backwards. And it's gonna feel rather jolty as well, where a lot of people feel when they get to these putts is they're already tense because they're not used to straddling. So they're going to over-isolate the legs, over-isolate the arm, or do the best to get them working in harmony like we wish the Fire Nation would have. And then you're just in trouble. For my personal timing, what I like to do is I like to bring the disc down, and once the disc reaches that lowest point, that's what causes me to start extending up. I'm going to extend up, and then from here, I can already feel the weight transferring and the power transferring up my legs, and it's gonna cause this whip to occur. Boom. If y'all wanna over-exaggerate this motion, like shoot, 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 poof. Try not hard to be like really weird about this, but that's an over-exaggerated form. I think if you're too like loose and whipping that, you're gonna over wrist it once again, and you're gonna cause yourself boop to whip it too far to the right. Once again, this is not meant to be a super powerful putt. I even look at someone like Calvin Heimberg, who's using a straddle putt from 70, 80 feet, but even his straddle putt isn't designed to just whip him from that distance. When he reaches that distance, he's gonna add a little bit of a step, so that way he's not trying to whip his hands so hard. He's just boom, nice and controlled. That is Calvin's 70-foot, 80-foot straddle is with that much effort. These are just a few of the tips, but I have one more thing that I want to mention on why I think the straddle putt could be an effective part of your game and why you should utilize it more often. But before we dive into that, I want to make sure if there are things that I'm not answering, please ask questions down in the comments below. I'm going to do my best to get to those. I'm also going to let my coach, Mike Strauss, know about this so that he can address things as well in the comments, and we can be a resource for all of you. So why do I think you should look at using a straddle putt more often than you do? If you've seen any of my practice putting routines and things I talk about whatever your dominant stance is when you're practice putting. Let's say you're throwing 3 putts at each station. You should do 2 in your dominant stance and then 1 in your off stance, so that you're a little more familiar with that off stance style. This is hole 10 at George Ward. In the long position, I think it comes in at like 290 something feet. Super low ceiling, elevation change. You're throwing uphill to get into a low ceiling shot. Grab a birdie on this hole and you are feeling immaculate about your game, specifically this basket. And let's say that my drive, I actually decided to be smart for once, and rather than throwing a mid at it, I stepped up to a fairway or something like that, ended up past the basket, giving more disc than necessary because I didn't let pride get in the way today. I should have pulled a fairway out for this example, but I put a pig there because one day I hope to be able to throw a pig this far. That'd be pretty sick, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 12, 13, 14. I'm about 14 feet away from the basket right here. Now, the bummer is, if I was a predominantly stagger putter, I cannot stagger putt right here because the tree is in my way. Now, a lot of folks that I've seen, and a lot of you that watch these videos, would look at this I'm 14 feet away from the basket opportunity on a bonus birdie and think to yourselves, I've got to capitalize here. I've got to capitalize here, but I'm worried because now I cannot throw my normal putt. I have to throw a stagger putt. For example, if I'm right here and I get to stagger putt, boom, that one's in. That one's not in because I'm trash. But you guys get the gist. I should be able to make most of them from right here without even blinking, without even thinking about it. I knew there's a pretty low chance of me making both of those because I was going to try to use it as an example, and we don't make cuts here. Not being afraid of my straddle putt, being able to step out here like this and just simply aim it at the basket and then throw these putts, bang. As you saw, not only did we make both of the straddles We made a third one there as well. I was willing to step out and practice this putt and do this putt, and therefore I was able to capitalize because I'd put in the time to be familiar with my stroke. I have very rarely met someone who straddle putts predominantly and has gotten to a point or a lie while they're out there on the course and has told themselves, or I've heard them say out loud, oh man, this is a bummer. I have to stagger putt right now. Almost all of the complaints or worries that you hear while you're out there on the course are people saying, oh, I can't believe I had to throw a straddle here. But if you get used to this putt, you get used to practicing with it. And when your putt feels off, a lot of you who maybe have never found confidence in your putt before is because you've been so locked into doing what the YouTubes and the internet have told you in the staggered putt that maybe it's time for you to try out the straddle. If you've never tried out the straddle as your predominant putt, it may be exactly what you're looking for, because you have people like Kevin Jones and Nate Sexton who are fantastic straddle putters, and they use the straddle putt almost every opportunity that they get. There are almost no circumstances where a straddle putt will be unavailable. So when you find yourself in a tricky lie trying to take advantage of the opportunity that you've given yourself off the tee box on the approach, not fearing the straddle putt but embracing the straddle putt could be exactly what you need to start gaining strokes on your opponents. I promise you, if you can start getting used to hitting straddle putts in a wide open field from 20 feet, stepping up to 14 footers with a little bit of something in your way, it's suddenly gonna get a whole lot easier. So that is gonna wrap things up for today's video. I hope this was helpful, and like I said, if you are struggling with straddle putts, don't worry, you are not the only one out there. But I want you to not walk into opportunities, especially like the one we just discussed, where a bonus birdie may be on the table and you're not giving yourself a chance to actually succeed before you even walk up to the putt to take your chance to succeed, because you're afraid of a straddle putt and something that you could put some time into, put a little practice into. And I promise, with just a little bit of practice, and maybe even if you're out there on the course and you are playing a solo round, throw for every stagger putt you throw a straddle putt for the next 3 rounds. And I promise just even those 54 reps are gonna help you so much in making sure that you get the confidence you're looking for to succeed while you're out on the course. Straddle phobia is a real thing, and I want y'all to be able to overcome it as best as you can. And I want to be there to help any way that I can in that process. In the meantime, I want to say thank you for watching. I hope you have an amazing rest of your week and that you can make it fantastic for someone else too. But for now, we're going to leave you with the birdie.